Good morning, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. This is Makeda Valletta on IG Live, and as usual, I will repost this video onto my YouTube channel. This morning, I just wanted to do a quick talk about something that's kind of been on my mind for the past couple of days, but then really, the past week, but it's really exploded in this last few days with this R. Kelly thing. So, and a lot of you may know my work, that I do a lot of work around sacred sexuality and trauma and working with nanny eggs. A lot of teaching women internal stuff with nanny eggs and yoni eggs. And for the past, week, I've been reflecting back about my life and my relationships. And, the one common thread is that for some reason, I have a better understanding of it now, but the men that I have been with, my exes, they all had deep childhood trauma. They all had mother issues, serious mother issues and daddy issues. But that mother trauma, I feel like, is pretty bad for boys. It's probably really bad for girls too. Although daddy issues may affect women more, but mother issues seriously affect boys, and probably girls too, because our mothers are the ones that carry us in their womb. So, and this is why I believe so much in women doing the work, working on themselves, clearing trauma before they get pregnant and have babies, because we can pass on things to our children. And a lot of us know that, if a woman is distressed or miserable when she's pregnant, she can pass that on to the baby, which is another reason why I've always been super pro-choice. Like, when I was in high school, I was involved in sexuality education. I worked for NARAL New York, which is a National Abortion Rights Action League. And I went around New York City doing, educating my peers on legislation, on women's reproductive rights, grassroots advocacy. To me, no woman should ever be forced to have a baby. If she's pregnant and she says, I cannot do this, nobody should be imposing on her that she has to have this baby, because that's how monsters are created. You have somebody who, I remember an ex that I had 7 years ago. His mom had him at 16. She did not want him, but her family was very religious, and they forced her to have the baby. And she never acted like she wanted him. She never expressed any love towards him. And it created a monster of a man. It created a man who seemed like this charming, good stand-up black man on the outside. But when it came down to it, he was a monster, had serious, deep issues. And that's like a whole book, right? And so me, I'm thinking, how did I get wrapped up in somebody like this? And it's because, I am an empathetic person. People might think that I'm mean, but I'm actually a very nice person, and I'm always trying to see the best in people. And a lot of people are just good actors, and they present something, But it's important for every woman and every person to have certain standards and things that are just not okay, that you just won't accept. And so if you have that set in place, even though you might intermingle with somebody that is a little nuts, you can get out of it before it gets too bad, right? Okay, so that being said, then the person I was with after him had mom and dad issues, because his father was super duper abusive. Like he told you stories about his childhood that made you cringe. Like, you don't even know what to say. Like, it's so disturbing. And his father abused him and his siblings really bad, and his mom let it happen. She never protected him. So he would tell me things like, if it wasn't for his mom, he loved his mom so much, because if it wasn't for his mom, he would probably be dead right now, because he wanted to kill his dad, but his mom stopped him. But at the same time, his mom didn't protect him. If you let your son get his head bashed in with a peanut butter jar and getting concussions from his father, taking him to the hospital while he's bleeding out of his head, and the father wasn't even American, he was Nigerian, and the mother was from New York City. She was born and raised in New York City. She had siblings in New York City. So it's like, why the fuck would you stay with a man who is doing that to your children, and his whole family is from across the water. He has nobody here. You do. So why would you stay in that and let that happen? That to me is not a good mom, you know? So he had like this love-hate thing with his mother because she didn't protect him. And then it came out as, you know, in the relationships there were serious issues because, you know, a lot of, well, first of all, abused people a lot of times. It's not always the case, but we know that that is a trend. Also, abused people a lot of times love their abuser, which to me, I never understand that shit because it's like they can hate somebody so much, but then sweat them so much. Like they hate their mother, but then they love their mother. And, you know, my first ex, whose mom had him at 16 and didn't want him, that story was absolutely fucking traumatic and horrible. My relationship and how that happened, especially because in the end, he really tried to go out of his way to destroy my life and destroy, you know, certain things. And his mother was involved in it. And it was just really crazy, you know. So this is something, so I said to myself, okay, no more relationships. Like, you know, I'm a healer, and healers can attract sick people, but we're not meant to heal everybody. And some people can't be healed either. You know, as a healer, sometimes you can run yourself into the ground trying to save people. And so it's important for people to do their own work. Like, before you get in a relationship with somebody, you need to make sure that your shit is balanced. You know what I'm saying? You need to make sure that you work. We all have issues from childhood. Some people's issues are worse than others. Like, some people got some real disturbing shit, you know, from childhood. And I think for me, you know, like I grew up with, you know, close to both of my parents. I'm, you know, close, but my dad he was like argumentative and was a little crazy. Like a lot of old school black intellectuals could be a little crazy. But when I grew up and I heard other people's stories about their childhood and other people's stories about how their parents treated them, I was just like, whatever little issues I had was not that serious. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I was told that I was loved every day. My dad might have been a bit argumentative and impatient sometimes, but he always told us he loved us. He still does that. If I call him right now, that's going to be the first thing he's going to say. He spent a lot of time with us. You know, he had me, you know, at museums and the park every day. So, you know, like there's other people who I would meet who they told me their father never told them they loved them ever. Their parents never told them they loved them. Their parents never encouraged them. Their parents, you know, so that does something really damaging to people. And then when you know, couple that with like sexual abuse and stuff like that, people sometimes, I'm not going to say they can't recover from it. It just takes a lot of work. And sometimes I think for men, it could be even more difficult. And I'm not 100% sure about that. But I do know that my work with working with nanny eggs and yoni eggs and teaching women, and over the past 12 years, there's so much that I've learned about trauma and healing from trauma and dealing with women. And working with the eggs does help a lot. Like, even if a woman is, you know, not conscious of anything or does nothing else but put the egg in, it still will work on her energy fields, her meridians. It'll still help balance her hormones. It'll still help dissolve some of that trauma that she carries in her womb and her vaginal canal. But I always thought, what is the equivalent for a man? Because there are men with trauma too. So because research shows that talk therapy does not help people heal. Talk therapy helps people to understand what their problem is. That doesn't mean that you have healed from it. You could say, okay, I'm screwed up because of this, but have you healed from it? You know what I'm saying? So deep traumatic healing a lot of times needs more than talking. A lot of times you have to go deep into ancestral stuff. You have to go into spiritual stuff. It might have to be some body work involved. And then some things may never be curable because it's that serious. So I feel like it's important for people to take having children more seriously and doing the work on themselves before they bring new lives into this world. Because when you bring people into this world that you don't want and you are miserable the whole time that you're pregnant, or you know, now you're treating this kid like shit. Now you create monsters in the world that the rest of us have to fucking deal with. And so this is something that, you know, I've been studying a lot, like in the past week in particular, on the topic of narcissists. Like, I had always heard the word narcissist. Like, we know that Donald Trump is the classic example of a narcissist, but I thought that a narcissist was just somebody who was full of themselves, you know, who just loved to look at themselves. But it's actually a lot more. It's like a freaking disease, and they are like a disease. And now watching this R. Kelly situation, and like, you know, getting the details and the depth of it, R. Kelly is the perfect example of a narcissist. And narcissism starts in childhood. And it starts with bad relationships with the mother. Another thing with narcissists, I've had relationships with male narcissists. They paint a fake picture. But the same thing is true with female narcissists. And I've actually was stalked by one, which is like, I always told myself, when I turned 40, I'm going to write a book about what happened in 2007 with this crazy ass narcissist who they might be more destructive, actually. Because women are just more evil and a little bit more smart and think of more evil shit to fuck up your life. But there was a female narcissist who was stalking my dad. She was a fan of his from the radio. My dad is involved in media. He's a journalist. He had a radio show in New York City. And this woman was a psychopath, like certified like psychopath, like mental patient. But he didn't know that at the time. And she began stalking him. And to make my dad miserable and to make him go crazy, she started fucking with me because she knew how close me and my dad are. And she was jealous of that because her dad never cared about her. Her dad was never in her life. She had a daughter. Her daughter's dad was never in her life. And so she just hated the fact that, like, my dad talks about me in the highest regards at all time. And at the time, I was on my dad's radio show a lot in New York. And this is before social media, so I had this huge audience from the radio, and nobody knew what I looked like, right? And I would go places in New York, and people would recognize me from my voice, and they would tell me, "Oh my God, you saved my life," because I would talk about health stuff, and people would give me gifts, kiss my hands, and my dad always told me, when he had been on radio for years, but he said, when you're on my show, I get the switchboard, because it was a live show, we took calls. He said that the switchboard or whatever was lit up the entire time I was on the show. And that didn't happen with anybody else. So I did have like this huge audience, and she was jealous of our relationship. So she stalked us, my family, but especially my dad and myself for a few years, maybe about 5 years. But that first year was really bad, and it messed up a lot of things in my life. It caused me, at the time, I had a 2-bedroom apartment in Harlem. I had a gym in my apartment where I trained my clients. I had to move. I had to move. I almost went to trial with the NYPD, and I ended up moving to Bed-Stuy, then I ended up moving out of New York because I was being harassed by the police. It was a lot of stuff, and it's something that I don't really talk about. And one day, and having to go through that kind of attack that is so much worse than what you can imagine, after going through that, I thought, if that didn't break me, whatever the fuck else happens after this is like, no. You know what I'm saying? And so I've gone through attacks after that were also a bit traumatic by narcissistic people. But I just didn't let it, because I know who I am, you know what I'm saying? And what a narcissist will do is they seem charming in the beginning, and there's different kinds of narcissists, but some of them will try to collect information on you only to use it against you and smear you and try to destroy your life. And I remember, dealing with this woman who was probably the worst of it, and then the second worst was the person I was in a relationship with. 3 years later, a guy who did shit that was so bad that I've never even heard anybody tell me a story like the shit. And so I never knew what a narcissist was until like last week. And now I'm like, oh my God. Like now, first of all, I know I'm not crazy for saying that I can't be in a relationship with any more men who have mother and father trauma. And no offense to anybody, because whoever has that, I hope you heal. But what I have noticed in my life, especially with the men in particular, is that when they have that deep childhood trauma, that deep mother issues, you know what I'm saying? Their behavior is very weird and unpredictable. You won't understand it. They have issues that, because first of all, you're dealing with a man. So men already have a hard time expressing themselves and getting their thoughts straight. And that's scientifically proven. Women can process a lot of information at once, whether it be emotional or whatever. We can process it, have a feeling. Men have a harder time with that. The male brain needs, silence and stillness and to like kind of understand these things. And women are already more internal. We're more intuitive. And the healing really comes through us more than anything. We're the more powerful healers. So I feel like, yes, there are women who are damaged for life, but I feel like it's a little bit easier for a woman to heal from stuff than men. And I've always wondered, what is the solution for men? I still don't really know. But what I do know is that you can ruin your life trying to heal people. And of course, I'm not a professional. You know what I'm saying? So you can leave that for the professionals. That's another thing. people with deep mental issues, I don't think the individuals should try to, oh, you can save them, you can help them. No, let them go to somebody else before they wreak havoc in your life, because there's so many people in this world. You know what I'm saying? Just go find somebody who's sane and balanced. Now, you know, with R. Kelly, it's like, you know, I made a video yesterday. I didn't say everything I want to say, and there's more points I want to make about that situation, but I probably won't do it in this video. But the one thing I will say is that he's a classic example of a narcissist. You should go, you know, there's tons of YouTube videos or blogs on narcissists. It's a disease, okay? So this is not making an excuse for him, but it is a disease. Just like pedophilia is a disease. When I was in college, I was a coaching science minor at one point, and to get like the coaching certifications and be in coaching science, we had to learn about pedophiles. We had to watch a documentary about pedophiles, because they say that pedophiles a lot of times choose jobs with kids. So they become Little League coaches, they work at Disney World, they do things where they can be around kids, have access to kids, get trust of the kids in their family. A lot of parents trust coaches, you know what I'm saying? A lot of parents trust religious institutions, because I always say I didn't grow up in the church, I didn't grow up with religion, but damn near everybody I know that has been, you know, severely molested and had crazy shit happen did grow up with that. You know, they might have grown up in a religious family, they grew up in the church. A lot of times people don't believe them, you know, because even with this R. Kelly thing, for so many black people, I mean, it's deeper. It's so many other factors besides him just being the devil, you know. First of all, every, you know, this is kind of going off topic and deeper into him. I didn't really want to do that, but I'm just going to say that every city I've been in, including when I grew up in New York, all the teenage girls, not me, because I never wanted to mess with grown men, but all the teenage girls that I knew were messing with grown men. And actually, somebody just brought to my attention that Misa, the baby of Justin, who had baby with Puffy, she was 16 when Justin was born, and Puffy was like in his early 20s. And you can go look it up. And so that was not an uncommon thing. You know what I'm saying? I don't know why young girls want to mess with grown men, because I never, to me, I'm like, I'm a teenager, I'm going to mess with a teenager and stay in my teenage world. But we all know it's very common, you know what I'm saying? And not just in the United States, but in the world. So that's a common thing. I also think that 16 and 17-year-old girls do have some idea what they're doing, because the girls I knew who were 16 and 17 knew what they were doing. Nobody put a gun to their head. They wanted to mess with grown men. They usually bragged about it. I never got it, but it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? But I think also one of the issues is the fact that, and people kept saying, oh, you know, black women, people don't care about black women. I don't think it's just black women. I think it's all women. Like, it's all women. Because with Bill Cosby, that was mostly white women that he raped, and people didn't believe that either. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing about narcissists. And men in positions of power get away with murder. OJ killed a white woman. He didn't get penalized for that, and it was obvious that he did that shit. It was obvious to me when I was back then that he did that. You know, so powerful men, you know. Rich, powerful men get away with murder, and being black is not hindering them for that. So when black men, yes, it's hard out here for black men, but when there's black men, black man's always a victim. The black man is not always a victim. There are fucked up black men, just like there are fucked up every other kind of men. You know what I'm saying? Just because you're black doesn't make you exempt. Now, also the fact that society teaches women for some reason, like I've always been a very independent woman. Like, I have a twin brother, you know, so I've always shared something, and I know how to work as a team and share things with somebody. I'm not a selfish person, but I have always wanted to be dependent on nobody but myself. Now, maybe that's why, like, in certain relationships, it wasn't, you know, especially when I was younger, it wasn't a requirement to me that a dude, like, I wasn't so focused on his money or how much money he had or stuff, and I'm still really not, but it's just that he's got to stand on his own 2 feet. Like, it's nice for, I've never had a man pay my bills, anything like that. It's always been me, myself, and I. And I don't feel comfortable with that, because a lot of times I always felt like when a woman's in that situation, if a man's paying for everything, they act controlling. You know, I had that experience with a lesbian. You know, we're a lesbian woman who, and I don't really deal with lesbians like that, because I think that they are on some other shit that's different than bisexual women. And they can also be very controlling in a way that I just can't get with. But I remember this lesbian that I was seeing like some years ago, and when I would hang out with her, I wasn't expecting her to pay for everything. She would pay for everything, but then her energy was overbearing, and like she owned me or something, like, I don't like that shit. I don't like feeling like somebody's trying to control me or you own how I move. No, you know what I'm saying? And when women get in relationships with dudes who pay all their bills and first of all, these men feel like they can do whatever they want, and you can't do shit. You're in a miserable situation, but then you can't leave because you can't afford to. Fuck that. You will never, I don't care what happens, ever see me in a situation where I have to stay in a bad situation because I can't afford it to leave. No. That is what people should be teaching young girls. Instead of teaching girls, oh, you got to find a man with this kind of money and he's got to invest money in you and blah, 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 blah. Number one rule to all the girls, all the ladies, be able to take care of yourself first, okay? Be self-sufficient. A lot of people try to make it seem like it's a problem with being an independent woman. No, it's a problem with being a dependent woman, okay? A dependent woman is a fucking problem. People want to try to tell you it's a problem being an independent woman because people are intimidated by independent women, And you can be an independent woman and be in a partnership with an independent man. You know what I'm saying? Because nobody should be dependent on anybody except children being dependent on their parents. And when your parents don't give a fuck about you, they're not giving you love, they're not taking care of you, they're neglecting you, they're abandoning you, that fucks people up. Another person, I remember when I was in college, there was this dude who I was so in love with him. Like, me and him weren't in a relationship because when I was in college, I wasn't about that life. I was like, fuck a relationship. I was running track, I was dancing, I was trying to be a good student. I was a biotechnology major, which is hard, so I wasn't focused on, I thought that relationships in college was not a good idea. And I don't think that any girl should be thinking about getting married at 19 or even being locked down in a relationship at 19. If you had a high school relationship and now you go to college, break that shit off and be single. College is a time to get to know yourself, to be free, to have experiences. Who's trying to have a serious relationship in college? You know what I'm saying? And then when stuff goes wrong and you have breakups and stuff, then you can't focus. Schoolwork needs to be number one, and getting your life together and not being worried about that. Even my grandmother had a scholarship to Howard University. All of my family, and my grandmother died in 2015, and she was 94. So she was born in 1921, right? She had a scholarship to Howard. My whole family went to HBCUs, and in my dad's family, the women were educated. That was the thing. They weren't maids for white women. No, they were nurses and they were teachers. They were educated. So my grandmother was the only one who did not go to college. She took the train from Florida to Howard and ended up going to D.C., but she ended up going to Philly and marrying her high school sweetheart, who was my dad's father, right? But then my grandmother became a widow at 25. My dad's father died when he was 4 years old. So, when I was in college, all my grandmother ever told me was, don't mess with those boys, don't let them in your room, put a chair against the door, like overly paranoid, like don't have no babies, don't. And she comes from a time when it was normal for women to have babies at 20 and stuff like that. And she was married first, you know what I'm saying? But she still was telling me, don't do that, My dad's sister, my aunt, who I was very close to growing up, she's like another mother, somebody who I highly respected, a boss, She was married twice, but always an independent woman, could always take care of herself, and if a dude tried to attack her, I remember my dad used to tell me, your aunt, she used to beat up men all the time, and I thought he was joking, until recently, in the past couple of years, she starts telling me stories from men who tried to violate her, even an ex-husband who was an alcoholic, who was drunk one day, tried to get rowdy, and she beat him up, like she wasn't playing that shit, I remember being a kid, when Boys in the Hood came out, and my aunt took me to see it. And her boyfriend was with us, and we were driving back home, and she's trying to have a conversation with us about the moral of the story, and she didn't want it to be about revenge and all that stuff, and her boyfriend was like, yeah, you got to get revenge, that's the moral of the story, and she's like, look, that's not what I want them to learn and take from this. I talked to her parents, and that's not what the lesson that they want her to learn, so stop. He kept going on with it, and she said, look, say one more thing, and I'm kicking you out this car. We're on the highway. He kept talking. She stopped on the highway, pulled over, opened the door, let him out. He got out on the side of the highway and walked home. And I remember as a kid seeing that. And, that's the kind of woman I am. A no bullshit woman. I'm not putting up with that shit. And society, not just in the United States, but all over the world, women are taught to be docile. Women are taught to submit to bullshit. Women are taught to be dependent on this dude. And that's one thing about a lot of Southern women, like in that Southern mentality. And it depends on where you are in the South, but a lot of them want to be kept. Like, I especially have seen that in Atlanta, where you have, like, stripper culture is everything. And no disrespect to strippers, but I'm saying that mindset where it's like, they just see men as money. Like, they see you as a check. They see you as, what can I get out of you? And they are excellent at running game. Excellent. People can hate on strippers if they want, but a lot of them are winning. They get married to ball players and rich dudes and have babies, and, you know, they know how to run a game, whatever, you know. More power to them. But I'm just saying, you have to keep your independence. There's nothing wrong with wanting a man that has money, but you to be a housewife and your income is all dependent on him, not a smart thing. So Andrea Kelly, like, I watched the Surviving R. Kelly thing, but it was just so much shit going on. It was like, I feel like I have to go back and watch it. So I don't completely understand. Maybe I missed something with how Andrea Kelly got involved with him, but number one, why? I just don't understand why at 19 you're trying to marry somebody, and somebody who's just all of a sudden popping a wedding on you and your family doesn't know. Like, that's just common sense to me. So it's hard for me to understand that. So I feel like a lot of the problem is coming from how people are raising their kids, what they're telling their kids. People are not protecting their kids. People are not loving their kids. You know what I'm saying? People are just having kids like it's fucking nothing and having these damaged beings. And so for no other reason, abortion needs to be legal. Because if a woman says, I don't want to have this baby, let her have an abortion if that's what she wants. Why would you force somebody to have a kid that doesn't want it? You know what I'm saying? But then you have people who are not even thinking about having an abortion. They just have this baby and they're just awful parents. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I think it's important for people to be educated on narcissists. There are male and female narcissists, and it all starts in their childhood. And if you don't understand the signs of it, you know, you can easily get wrapped up in that. And some people, like for me, thankfully, I always cut shit off before I got too deep into that, because I didn't even know what a narcissist was, but I knew this shit ain't right and this don't work for me. But it's something that people need to be educated on, just like people are educated on STDs and how not to get the flu, and how to, you know, get good credit. You need to know about narcissists because they're everywhere and they wreak havoc. And some people marry them, some people have babies with them, and then it's really a problem, you know, or they befriended them. And so I remember like this, and there's different kinds, you know. But I remember another dude there in college that I was dealing with, who I was like so in love with him. We weren't in a relationship because I wasn't trying to be in one, but he was like my number one, you know. I never asked him what he was doing. He never asked me what I was doing. It was just what it was, right? But I remember his mom, like, abandoned him when he was young. I don't know if she was a drug addict, but she was, like, never around, and she would tell him that he would tell me this all the time. Like, she would tell him she's coming to see him. He said he'd be waiting for her, and she wouldn't come. And then days would go by, you know, and weeks would go by. And she would do that all the time. And he was severely, like, he was such a handsome dude. Like, everybody thought he was so handsome. You know, he was so emotional towards me. You know, we had great sex, but you could see the sadness in him. Like, he was really sad and deeply hurt from the issues with his mom, you know. And I don't know if he'll ever heal that, you know. But the thing is, if you know that you have deep childhood issues, if you know that you have mommy and daddy issues, you don't have to work on it, but it's a good thing to try to seek help or do things to try to work on, you know, really self-reflect, be real with yourself, dig deep, become internal, you know, do whatever kind of work you need to do to try to work on that and heal that. Because it's a selfish thing to just run through life wreaking havoc on other people and not caring. That's the thing about narcissists. They don't care. You know, they don't care. They actually feed off of you being crazy or making you crazy or making you miserable or making you argue. They actually feed off of that negative energy. So you could flip on a narcissist thinking like, and it's just making them even more excited. They're pathological liars. They paint things to be what they're not. And again, R. Kelly, you know, and R. Kelly had deep issues with his mother. He also was molested a lot as a kid. And that the whole molestation thing is way too common. And it's not just men molesting girls. You know, there's a lot of grown women an older woman molesting boys too. And that could be an issue, even though boys don't seem to be as traumatized by it. But I still think that depending on how it happened and what happened, it does. And it's still weird. Like, as a woman, why are you trying to mess with little boys? Like, I've never had the desire to mess with a little boy. Like, when I was 17, I wasn't trying to mess with a 12-year-old or 13 or 14. When I was 20, I wasn't trying to mess with an 11-year-old boy, 13-year-old, 14. But I've heard that so much, so I don't know what's wrong with those women either who do that. It's all kind of weird. And sexual abuse happens so much that it means that we are all surrounded by people who are pedophiles. Like, because if it happens, if that many people have been sexually abused, that means there's a lot of motherfucking pedophiles around us that we're not recognizing. And so it's important for parents to teach their children about what's appropriate. You know what I'm saying? I can only think that, it didn't happen to me, so I think, what did my parents do? That didn't happen to me. Because my dad had a lot of friends that would come by the house, artists, all kinds of people, My parents used to have parties when I was a kid. Nothing ever happened. And it's because of them paying attention to certain things, them teaching us about what is appropriate, making us feel comfortable that we can speak to them. And then religion. People keep talking about R. Kelly. Oh, he made all these sexual songs and these religious songs. And religion is a problem, Like, in the black community, it's a problem in the world. And I always talk about patriarchal religion being the fucking root of all evil. But R. Kelly comes from that church shit, Chicago's a very churchy city. But a lot of black America is very churchy. But Chicago's on top of that with that, okay? Now, like, the church teaches you, oh, you can forgive. Black people are the most ridiculously forgiving people, to the point where we just look stupid, Like the shit in South Carolina, that church, that white boy that went in the church and shot up that in South Carolina, and all these black people, oh, I forgive him. Fuck forgiving him. What do you mean you forgive him? Like, are you kidding me? I would go torture his mother or something, like offer her head type shit in front of him. I'm not forgiving you. I'm not forgiving somebody who comes up into a building and shoots my family members. That just sounds dumb. And only black people say that. So if you're going to forgive that, then of course you would forgive an R. Kelly and all the other pedophiles. No. R. Kelly doesn't need to be forgiven. He needs to be held accountable, but he also, I'm sure, needs help. And I don't know if anybody ever tried to help him. I don't know if he ever sought help. He always talked about he was praying all the time. And people that be in church all the time, praying all the time, are suspect to me, because some of the most disturbing stories I've heard come out of the church. Even with the Nation of Islam, you had Elijah Muhammad, Didn't he have a bunch of kids with teenage girls? But people still act like the Nation of Islam is this honorable, institution. And I could say a lot about that, but I'm going to keep my mouth shut because I don't need people coming after me. But I just grew up around some real deal people, and I've seen a lot. So I know some things that I myself know I can't speak about. But I'm just saying, there's a lot of pervs, male pervs in religion. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. All of those patriarchal religions are a problem with the world. And so but black people in Christianity and being so obsessed with forgiving is a problem. Everybody doesn't deserve to be forgiven. And having that mentality of forgive can get you in some shit. And when people come from families where there's abuse, there's sexual abuse rampant, nobody's protecting anybody. Everybody's keeping a secret because y'all know what's happening. Because if it's happening to multiple people, then y'all know what's happening. And nobody cares, nobody's protecting. That creates a problem, a person with serious problems. And so if you even are watching this and think you might be one of those people, I suggest you research narcissism. Research how you can possibly get help, because people who are narcissists need extreme help if they're even going to be helped, because some people say they can't be cured. And narcissists really are not empathetic people. They might try to act like it at first, but they're not. They gaslight you. They're fake, but they're very good actors. Very good actors, which is another thing in my rule of dating and stuff. I don't like to deal with actors, and no offense to the actors out there, no offense. But I do believe that most actors are crazy and don't know who they are. Now, it's not all of them. Maybe like 2% are balanced. But I think that a lot of actors are running from who they are. They're running from something. They spend their whole life trying to get into character, to be this other character. And they usually have a lot of drama and create a lot of drama in their life. And it's like, how do you know who this person is if they're good at acting? So Bill Cosby, perfect example, actor. Everybody wants to believe that he is this person that you saw on the Cosby Show. And he was acting. That's not him. But you believed it so much. And they're just like, oh, how could he do that? And blah, 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 blah. Because he painted this picture of America's dad and this great stand-up black man. And I'm telling you, that's what they do. They paint, some of them do. The Donald Trump didn't do that. But a lot of narcissists will put this lie out and this facade that they're this great stand-up person. And they're really the devil behind closed scenes. And they manipulate people around you, you know, to believe them. And can be putting things so that if you ever come forward and talk about what's happening, nobody believes you. Okay? That's what narcissists do. They think that everything's about them. They don't care about their consequences. They don't care about hurting people. They're not empathetic. They're not sympathetic. And they're excellent actors. And so there's so many, once you understand where a narcissist comes from, how to identify them, you will see them all around you. And Bill Cosby is the perfect example of one. And for people to act like, you know, like again, it's not just about black women because those are a bunch of white women. Nobody cared. You know, my dad told me that back in the 60s, nobody cared about women talking about rape. They didn't even care in the 70s. Like, no. And especially when you're dealing with a man in a position of power, if you see how much R. Kelly had enablers around him helping him to make that happen. And that's just R. Kelly. So you don't think that Harvey Weinstein and every other powerful, famous man in this world can't get that too? Have enablers to do that? I mean, it's just, that's one reason why I didn't like the show Scandal, though. Because even though Scandal was a good show, to me, the character, who I know is based off a real character, Olivia Pope, I'm like, what does she stand for? She seems like soulless vessel who will, you know, defend anybody if she's getting paid. Like, she seems like the kind of person that R. Kelly could have hired her for damage control, and she would have done that. So I can't respect a person like that. It's not a respectable person. Somebody that anybody pays you, even if this person is wrong and shouldn't be defended and is blatantly guilty and done horrible shit. But because you're getting paid, your little agency is going to help save them and paint a different picture and attack whoever you need to attack while you're at it. I don't respect that, you know. But that's what narcissists do. And, yeah, so I just had to talk about that. I wish you all healing, whoever's going through things. If you have deep mother-father trauma, please get help as best you can. And to the women who are dating men, run when, you know, like, I don't want to say run from a man that has mother issues, because maybe there's hope for some of them. But unless they told you that they've been going to therapy on it or something, I would run from men who can't stand their mothers. Because first of all, that's the other thing. That's the other thing. Even with this R. Kelly thing. People love their abusers. That's the other thing that I can't get. So the men that I was involved with, they had these horrible moms, but then they loved her so much. Like, they hated her so much, but they loved her so much. And they will love the person that abused them more than the people that actually love them. And you see that in the R. Kelly thing as well, because you see some of these people where their families loved them. Their families were trying desperately to get them back. And they were raised in loving families. But then they're over here with this man who is beating them, not letting them eat, making them shit in the corner. Huh? Like, I don't understand that. And then you're there for years and you don't want to go, and what the fuck? Like, that shit would never make sense to me at all. Like, I would never understand brainwashing on that level. And some things we won't understand. But that's why, like, you know, and it traumatized people. They like love their abuser. And they push away the people that really love them. So if you know all those things, it's just a little bit of advice that you probably don't want to get involved with somebody that got severe childhood trauma with their mother. You know, I can't speak really to how severe childhood trauma with the father affects a girl. Like, we know it affects her. But only because I haven't been in a relationship. Like, I'm not a man or a woman, whatever, that's been in a relationship with a woman like that. But I have been stalked by a woman like that, who I never met a day in my life. And she had deep daddy issues. So maybe the same thing is true for women. I don't know. But I just know that be careful with people that have unresolved childhood trauma issues. And especially, I think, with the men. But I hope this video was helpful. And I do suggest that you educate yourself on narcissists and narcissism. And be careful, people. Bye. Have a good day.